Do you know the worst thing about Star Wars? It is in love with its nostalgia. You see, every Star Wars item, whether that is a movie, whether that is a TV show, especially in the last 10 years or so, they always try to harken back to the original trilogy. The Skywalker saga just cannot be left alone. Now listen, I think that Star Wars is a fascinating world. It is such a strange property, right? Because Star Wars, at least before the latest trilogy, but still, Star Wars that still kind of has that panache. It has that thing that it can do where it can make its items, its characters, its creature designs, its robot designs, like some of the most iconic things in pop culture instantly. Instantly. It's like a superpower, right? Like you think about, do you remember BB-8? I remember the trailer came out for, I think it was the first of the new Star Wars trilogy, and there was this little robot BB-8, and he was there in the trailer 1 second, and then he was everywhere in the world the next. And I don't know what other property in cinema can do such a thing before the movie even comes out, before people even learn to love the character. But I think that Star Wars has had this superpower pretty much from the very first film. The problem is these figures, right? The original Skywalker movies and everything, they became so legendary that Star Wars, I don't know if it's too afraid of its own success. I don't know if it's too afraid to let them go. But, over and over again, I've always said this: Star Wars simply cannot let go of that original time period. It is the same thing with like the Lord of the Rings series for me, where everything has to go back to Sauron. And I'm like, we've defeated this guy like how many times? Let him go. Let him go. Let the world move forward. I think that nostalgia is a hell of a drug, but it really starts to feel detrimental when you've been taking the same drug over and over again for about 30 years or so. Because I think the original Star Wars movie came out in 1995. And even today, with the latest like Disney Plus movies and TV shows, we are still talking about Star Wars, like the Skywalker something. They are always still like, even like the latest, like the Acolyte or something, they always have to go back to these things that always have to tie back to either a Princess Leia, to a, even in The Mandalorian, right? They brought back Luke Skywalker. Why can't you just let these things move forward? I think that Star Wars needs to take a very daring step and move like 200 or 300 years in the future, 500 years into the future, right? And listen, no more empire. Stop with like, no more star destroyers, no more Death Stars. Let the world have moved on. No more resistance organization. Like, listen, Star Wars is a world where you can have an infinite number of planets, infinite number of worlds, infinite number of interactions and crime syndicates, and all of these things, and it can just be fantastic. They can stand on their own. You can create new icons, new story for a new age and a new population. Because guess what? The millennials that grew up on Star Wars when they were little children, and then the Gen X before that, they're getting old. They're getting out of the game, man. And listen, the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, they just don't have those memories. They do not have that nostalgia. So Star Wars needs to move on. And similarly, gamers need to move on with certain things as well. I put out, a daring statement according to people, but you guys know this. I've said many times, and I stand by this: Clear Obscure Expedition 33 is one of the top five games of all time, bar none. There's no asterisk to that. There is no for a turn based game. There is no given its budget. There is no this or no that. No, nothing. It's just one of the best top five games of all time. That's it. Too cool. Listen, when I say this, everybody wants to bring me their nostalgic hits. Listen, bro. Chrono Trigger came in like, I think it also came in 1995, actually, ironically. It's been 30 years, bro. You know what? Let's all, as gamers, let's come to an agreement, okay? Here's my proposal for all of us. And I'm just going to assume you all agree because it just makes so much sense. If there is a game that is a massive hit, massive pop culture, massive influence on the industry, That game gets 10 years to reign at the top, right? It gets to reign on Mount Olympus. It gets to be one of the gods of gaming, okay? For 10 whole years. You can talk about that game, you can reference that game, you can compare that game to anything that comes 10 years after, maybe even things that came like 10 years before. It gets 10 years of just absolute rule on the Iron Throne, okay? 10 years. Fantastic. After that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that game and we're going to pull it into the Hall of Fame. It can't be touched, it can't be denied, it can't ever, be knocked down by anything else, right? But at the same time, you can't bring it up again. Because we have to move forward. We have to move on. Bro, are we going to still talk about Solitaire being like the most influential game of all time? Like, are we going to talk about Minesweeper? Are we going to talk about these games that are generations old? There are people that want to be like, oh my god, the original Prince of Persia. I love the original Prince of Persia. When you go and take a look at it now through a modern lens, guess what? It falls apart. But it's okay because it is anointed into the Hall of Fame. It's protected from criticism. Listen, after 25 years, you're not even allowed to mention anything bad about the game. I don't care how many flaws or plot holes you can find. After 25 years of being a classic, that thing is sacrosanct. It is a sacred artifact in our history, in our culture, in what it means to have become, to have been part of the human race. It's wonderful. But let's leave it there, okay? Listen, when I say that Clay Obscure is one of the, top five games of all time, it's not going up against Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is in the Hall of Fame, bro. It's no longer, do you know how I come to this? Let me tell you the logic. Do you know how the Olympics have been around for a very long time, right? And there have been people that were kings of the era, people that were like, you know, they were the superstars of the Olympics in their times. Now listen, let's say that it was like the 100-meter sprint. Do you really think that those athletes back then could stand up against the athletes that we have now, given their training, given the advanced nutritions and shoes and track rules and things that may have changed over time? The people now are setting records that make those people 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago look super slow by comparison. But if a person were to harken back to that era, they will understand it's the same thing with like any sports. Any sports, eventually you enter the Hall of Fame, right? Even if your record could not stand up to today's standard. And that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine. Like Usain Bolt will always be Usain Bolt, no matter who gets faster than him, no matter who accomplishes more gold medals than him, no matter who comes after. He had his moment. He set the world on fire. It was so fun. It was so exciting. He was almost the face of the Olympics all by himself. Same thing with Michael Phelps, right? We remember these athletes. Like I think we have Simone Biles now in gymnastry, whatever. She's a gymnast, right? But the point is this, right? The point is, we live through those moments. We live with these athletes. On tennis, we have like Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. We've had people before that. We had the freaking Serena Williams and everything like that. Listen, all of these people, they existed in the time, and I'm not saying that they don't have the career now, but the point is, the highlight, the peak, that gets to be protected, that gets to be sealed in the Hall of Fame. And no matter what happens in the future, there could be a tennis player who, let's say 20 years from now, just wins every single tournament, just tournament after tournament after tournament, just always the top, always gold, 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 gold. The Olympics crushes it, Wimbledon crushes it, freaking comes down to Australia, the Australian Open slays it, goes to Roland Garros, kills it. All of those things, right? Time and time and time again. And to me, what I would celebrate that, right? What I would be so happy for that, they will still, right, never take away from the beauty that was seeing Roger Federer play or like his final match, right? Or seeing Rafael Nadal play. And we don't have to compare them. We don't have to contrast them. We don't have to play the game of who would beat it, who would win versus the two, because one person existed in one era and defined it, and then this new athlete gets to define it too. That's the principle. That's the principle to me. So, for example, Mass Effect 2 was a seminal game for me. When I say that Clair Obscure is one of the top five games of all time, I'm not thinking to myself, oh, how does it compare against Mass Effect 2? No, Mass Effect 2 had this moment. It gets to be in the Hall of Fame. It gets to never have to come down to the from the mountain and then be like, I don't know, just put into the mud with a new title of a new game. This allows us to move forward because when we understand things, we have to understand that every 10 years, right, somebody has that seminal experience. Somebody has that game that for them will become that legendary title, will become the equivalent of the Chrono Trigger, will become the equivalent of the Perfect Dark, will become their first Halo experience. But again, when you play like a God of War 2018, are you compared to compare it to like the first Halo? Like, why? You enjoy both games. They can both be 10 out of 10s to you. And by the way, 10 out of 10 does not mean perfection. 10 out of 10 means that there's a level of excellence that to me pretty much negates all flaws that project possibly could have. That's a 10 out of 10. That's truly the definition of 10 out of 10. Not a lack of flaws, but an excellence that is so thorough that the flaws are rendered meaningless. They have no impact, even if they're actually quite annoying, you know? And that is the thing. We don't need to compare these games over and over again to games that came out 10, 20, 30 years ago. That people, when you say that you loved Astro's Playroom or Astrobot, and you think that Astrobot is one of the best platformers you've ever played, they want you to compare it against Nintendo's Mario 64. Why? Or like Super Mario, like, bro, why would I do that? Why would I have to go that far back? To be like, well, the joy I had as an 8-year-old, how does this compare to the joy I had as a 24-year? Like, bro, it's been 24. Like, bro, listen, it's okay. It's okay. So that's my proposal. Let's put into the Hall of Fame. Let's freeze it in amber. Let's hold it as, sacred objects that will never be compared. But then let's also just make room for the new experiences to define us, to shape us, to be like, listen, because what is the point if you have a conversation and people say, what's your top 5 games of all time? And you're coming up with games written like centuries ago. Like, what's the point of that? How does that educate us? How does that let me know what you like, what you don't like? Now, listen, if you're having a retro specific discussion, I can understand that. But then I would say compare them within games of their own era, right? Just compare them in there. That's my plan. That's what I propose. The next thing I want to talk about is the Xbox handheld. Listen, I came out with a video a few months ago, and I said that Xbox consoles are doomed to fail. And within that conversation, I basically said that I don't see any pathway, especially not handheld, where Xbox would make sense to have a particular video. So we're going to listen to old me, or slightly older me, slightly also more handsome me, because honestly, I like the haircut in there more than I have this one. But my barber told me, right? He told me that this is going to get, he told me I needed a reset. So you have to trust your people. So let's have a bit of a listen over here. Let me see. Yeah, and let's go. People are now saying that this handheld is going to be the primary way for Xbox to deliver their games to the customers, and I just don't see it. Because if you are Xbox and you make something that is comparable to an Ally X, let's say they're even using Asus like people are now saying they're going to do, such a stupid idea that would be. You find yourself in a situation where you still have no exclusives. Then you find yourself in a situation where you will not be able to outcompete with the current gen consoles. I'm not just talking about PlayStation, forget PlayStation. There is no handheld that uh, Xbox could bring out in the next 5 years that will outperform a Series X that was released 5 years ago. And yet, it will still be more expensive. It will still have no exclusives. It will not have the downsides of being tied to this screen, which is smaller, less ergonomically comfortable. I guess you could try to make it by making something like where you can buy a Xbox controller to work with it, and you can dock it, and you can plug it up to your TV. But when you use it as its own device, you'll be getting at most a 1080p, maybe 40 frames per second at medium to low settings. And then if that became the actual norm, understand that it will change the game development because now they have to take care of this lower skew. Now, of course, Microsoft has pledged to put a lot of the games onto the Switch, and I believe that even the Switch 2 will not be as powerful as this theoretical device. But now you're bringing down the bar each time. Instead of a new generation upping the anthem, you are literally just dragging your feet forward half a step at a time. Okay, so there you go. There was me basically telling everybody that I just did not see how this whole Xbox handheld made sense. Another thing that I've told a lot of people is every time they bring up this Xbox handheld, kept saying to them, Microsoft never promised this to you. Like, you do realize that, right? Microsoft never even said they were working on it. Phil Spencer hinted that what he would like is to be able to play his Xbox games on the go, and he said that if we were to do it, then he would want it to be done on a local level. And then people took those comments, which sometimes happen like almost at the same time, other times happen disparately, like he was speaking one conversation over here, and he said one part of that statement, and he was speaking in another conversation, he said the other part of that statement, but they basically melanged them together, right? They mixed them all together, and then they decided that Microsoft had pledged to them that they were coming out with this Xbox handheld. And so this is why I'm a little bit astounded, because now there's a new narrative. There's a new narrative since this news came out. There's a new narrative that basically says, haha, we always knew that this was never going to happen, and you were stupid for thinking that. And yet these are the same people that were talking about it over and over and over again. And listen, man, I hate to do this to my man, Dog Dark, but we do have to pay attention to this one, because this is a clip from a video he made just like what is it? Just a few days ago, maybe a day or two ago. And I don't know, man. You tell me if you see what I mean here, okay? Because I'm flabbergasted by how quickly this changed, by how these turns have tabled, okay? So let me just kind of show you a little bit of what I mean, okay? So let's listen to Doc
Listen,
over
they
here.
don't care about you, console gamer. I've been telling you, Microsoft has disrespected the console gamer so much this generation, and y'all just took it.
I mean, he's right. He's 100% right. Let's go.
We just took it. I'll put myself in your shoe until I finally said no more. I said no mas, no mas. And now they're showing you.
Can I just say the reason that I talk about Dog Dark and everything, because he's entertaining. Dog Dark is he walks a fine. It's not a line, but it's more like a region between like a toxic wasteland and a desolate place, right? Because on one hand, he has the toxicity of any export, right? And then the other hand, he's on X. He likes Xbox, and that's just absolutely desolate. But there's somewhere in the middle where he can bring his own charm there. He can bring some things, an energy and a passion, something that's purely of him, right? It has nothing to do with the platform, but purely of him that makes him so entertaining to watch. So, Doc Dark, if you see this thing or if you see a clip, just know I'm a big fan because you managed to make this delightful somehow. I don't know how you do it.
You are not worth them making a dedicated handheld just for you.
You see how he said that so confidently? You are not worth them making a dedicated handheld just for you. You see the strength with which he said that statement? It sounds to me like that statement by itself, right? It has a sort of implied implication that he's been telling them this the whole time. Like, this is something I've been saying, you guys haven't been listening, and yet here it is. That's kind of like, that's how it rings to me. That's how I hear it. Maybe that's a me thing. But I just want to dispute that claim a little bit. I know I'm making the claim. He's not making that claim. But that's just how it sounds to me. And this narrative is exactly what's happening now in the wider gaming community, especially on the Xbox content creator side.
How else you want to read this? I'll say it slowly again. Microsoft is saying you are not worth them making a dedicated handheld just for you. No, 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 no. You see, this is what Microsoft wants. You're either going to be a console gamer that plays on PlayStation, or you're going to be whatever type of gamer Xbox wants you to be, which is going to be some type of PC hybrid. This video doesn't have to be that long because I ain't trying to create too much hate. But just know that this to me makes sense. Don't be surprised if there is no Xbox hardware next generation and they do the same thing that they're doing with this handheld.
Wait, so you see now, he took the next step, right? And in a way, you can't blame him because it's a logical conclusion, right? I do agree with him. By the way, he's 100% right in that clip. Microsoft does not find the Xbox platform worthy of the investment that it would take, the faith and belief and into the audience. And in any case, they've never managed to make a piece of hardware, maybe aside from the Kinect, but a piece of console hardware, let's say, that actually made this money back, right? Like, they just cannot. They always sell these things at a loss, right? Cool, fair enough. But it's just there's something about the way he said a few of the sentences, and I just want to show this. Now, listen, dog, if you're watching this, I want you to know I'm going to be very careful here and I'm not going to be disingenuous about this, right? All I want to show, right, is that this man believed in the Xbox handheld up until recently. I'm not saying that he guaranteed it was going to happen. I think he was just entertaining the conversation. He makes a lot of videos. He's a lot more on topic and he's a lot more topical than I am. So that is that. So I'm not trying to go after Doc specifically, but over here, you see here, this was April 5, 2023, 2 years ago, and the title is Sony and Xbox want a handheld console. Perfectly fine, perfectly neutral. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's go to the next one. Over here, I like this video because he actually questions why do we make a Logitech handheld, assuming that it was going to be streaming only, like the Logitech something, I forget what it is, but whether it was going to be streaming only, and this was about 3 years ago, so that's actually before that, right? So then over here, he talks again about the Xbox handheld, and this is 11 months ago. And is it too late? And remember, I'm not going after Doc, but these were the conversations that the community was having. That's why he made videos about it. So I want you to know that the sentiment, especially on the Xbox side, truly believed in this Xbox handheld, right? I want you to really hear that. Then over here, 6 months ago, Sony, PlayStation, and Xbox both want to make a handheld. Whose will be better? Again, this lets you know that the conversation, the feeling amongst the Xbox community was this is happening, and we're going to see a handheld war. You guys remember that term, right? The handheld war. We were supposed to be getting Sony and Microsoft making dedicated local play hardware, not just streaming only, that was going to basically take on the Nintendo and the Steam Deck and the Lenovo Legion Go and the you guys all those PC things that never sell, right? And then just over here, 2 months ago, just 2 months ago, here's a video saying the Xbox handheld can be a winner. Okay, now this I think this one was tying back to this notion that Asus was going to make the handheld for them, and basically there was going to be an Xbox button, and I think that's what this video was about. Now listen, again, I'm not saying that Doc shouldn't have made those videos, and I'm not saying that he's being disingenuous. What I'm saying is that the community around the Xbox truly believed in this handheld. And yet, there is this new narrative going around that this never made sense from the same people that were talking up this handheld way up and down. And I'm talking about people who were talking about it way more than Doc was, were way more sure of it. Now the news come out and it's just flip flopping like a fish out of water. Let me tell you, man, it's incredible to see. Again, Doc Dark is a person who's got the pulse of the Xbox community conversation. He speaks about things that are topical, so you can go back and look at his titles to sort of understand what the sentiments have been. And just as you could see there, and I just did a quick search just on his channel, right? That was a conversation just a few months ago. But I can tell you that if you go and take a look at some Xbox, podcasts and channels, they've been waiting for this even as late as last week. They were still believing in this. It wasn't until this week that suddenly this never made sense. Suddenly there was a problem with it, right? Even though these are things that we on the PlayStation side have been calling out for the longest time, because it never really made sense. It never really made sense. And it was never promised. You can't listen. Every company is going to do R&D. All right. Every company should R&D. Do I believe that there was an Xbox handheld in the works? Absolutely. Do I believe that there is still a PlayStation handheld in the works that is going to work off natively? Absolutely. I would be disappointed if there wasn't. But do I expect that device to release? Not necessarily. Because at the end of the day, we want this constant research and development, but we do understand that certain of these projects are just not going to make the light of day. Maybe because they don't make economical sense, maybe because they just don't have the technology to produce it in mass results at a price point that we will find acceptable. Maybe just because they don't want to bother having yet another piece of hardware out there, yet another thing that they will need to stock and market and advertise and somehow fit into the ecosystem. Maybe because they rather wait until PlayStation 6 or the PlayStation 7 in order to bring something of that sort, where maybe they would have designed the consoles in tandem with their handheld to have some kind of integration that will make things a little bit easier on their side and a little bit more profitable on their end. So there's many reasons why many R&D projects may not come out. I just think that from the very onset, the idea of an Xbox handheld was not backed up by the actual, reality that we live in. If Xbox had been selling 60, 70, 80 million copies of the consoles, then there would be this demand. Because remember, I think that a handheld, right? Even a handheld that is almost seamlessly tied, and what I mean by almost seamlessly is that I still think that a handheld will be held back in that it cannot play the same most current games at the same resolutions and fidelity as a dedicated home console. But aside from that, let's say that it was seamlessly tied in every other way, right? Even then, I think that will only appeal to like 10 or 20% of the install base. Now, listen, that's fantastic. That would be a great result. Like you take a look at the PlayStation Portal, and I think PlayStation Portal is hovering around 3, 4, 5%, maybe 3%. I think 3% is the last percentage we actually got officially from Sony, and that makes a lot of sense because it doesn't have any local play. So for me, a device that has actual ability to play most games on the device, without the internet connection required, without the console required, and everything like that, I think that device can multiply that by at least 4 or 5 times, right? It can easily go between 10 and 20% of the install base. And that makes a lot of sense to then come out with it if your install base is high enough. But when you only have 30 or 40 million when you have 30 or 40 million, I guess, console install base, listen, at the end of the day, 4 or 5 million, it probably doesn't pay for the R&D that you put into that product because most consoles are like billion-dollar research and development projects. So there it is. Now, I also, like I said, I showed you the clip of the video before, and I go on to that clip and I tell you that the Xbox hardware in itself, even this whole next gen console that's saying, I'm going to reiterate it here, I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. You can say whatever you want about how exclusives don't matter or they're bad from the industry or they are this or they are that. The point is, every single product on this planet lives and dies by its exclusivity. That is it. Even Coca Cola is exclusive to certain fast food restaurants, and that is Coca Cola. That is like available everywhere else. That's everywhere else. But you go to certain cinemas or you go to certain what is it? You go to certain I don't know what fast food places, McDonald's versus Hungry Jack's, or I guess in America it would be Burger King. You go to certain places and the other one is not available. It's Pepsi versus Coke. And they made agreements and deals with one or the other. You go to certain places and then Krispy Kreme donuts are the only things that you can get, or you cannot get them. And these are what I would say very common, very like, I don't know, they're not highly exclusive products. They are not like a Hermes bag, they're not a Birkin, you know. But the thing is, every product lives and dies by its exclusivity. And very few products sell when they are not exclusive to some kind of thing or some kind of way. That's basically it. And even if the product is available everywhere, usually the recipe for that product, the thing, the secret sauce that allows it to be created and to be recognized as this particular entity, this particular company's product, usually that is locked down, right? Like no one is like, oh yeah, here are my 11 secret herbs and spices. You guys can make it at home. No, because they keep that exclusivity for themselves. So even if you can buy it anywhere that you want, the way to make it or the trademark behind it, the way that you can call it, like you guys know that champagne has to be a specific wine from a specific region of France. And for you to even call your wine a champagne, yeah, it has to go through a certification process. The thing itself is trademarked, so everybody else has to be called like white wine or some people I think they call them rosés or something, but that's because they can't use the name champagne. Okay, listen, that's pushing the limit of my alcoholic beverage knowledge. So some of those details might be off, but you understand exclusivity is the lifeblood of every industry, and ours especially. Like we are like the poster child for exclusivity. And if you have an environment where your main company is renouncing all exclusives, and yet you want to come out with hardware. I don't know how you can do that. The final thing I'm going to touch on today, because yes, we're going to try to make this a less than 1 hour video, just for shits and giggles, is I want to address the comments that Shuhei Yoshida made, and that made some people a little bit upset. And listen, there is something to be said about the fact that I am just a person on the internet who is passionate about this industry, but I've never been paid for my opinion, right? Shuhei Yoshida has been paid for his opinion. He thought that God of War 2018, when he first saw it, had a lot of things to be worked on. That was his opinion. That opinion was followed. He was paid for it, and it paid off. He has made mistakes that are based on his opinion, including Concord, by the way. That's on him. And that, again, he was paid for. He's been in this industry, he's lived it, he's breathed it. He's one of the biggest lights in this industry, we would say. And also, people always talk about this, right? One thing that annoys me with gamers is that they always ask for something, then, if ever they get it, they start to complain about it. People have said for so long, oh my God, we want PlayStation to speak out. We want PlayStation executives to speak to us. We want them to say something. We want them to be more transparent. Just say something. Just give us information. So here it is. And this man is giving you information. This man is speaking. Now he's not speaking on behalf of PlayStation anymore, but this is fairly close. He just left the company. It's not like he left the company, waited 7 years, and then started talking. No, he left the company and like the next day, he like literally the next day. I remember interviews where he said, yeah, my final day at PlayStation was yesterday. And he was already on interviews talking about the things we wish we could have asked him just a week before. But because he was part of PlayStation and they have their media policy, he couldn't talk. Then he leaves it, and immediately the next day, this guy opens his mouth and starts talking. And for the most part, everything that he has said is worth listening to, right? It's just for curiosity. So what I'm saying is that this is a fountain of knowledge that people say they wanted access to, and now that they have access to it, now they want to bitch and moan about it. Are you serious? Really? Because then why is Herman Holtz going to leave PlayStation and start talking? Because you guys are just ungrateful as fuck. Listen, Shuhei Yoshida, much like Sean Layden, has warned us against this whole subscription service. Sean Layden took a very cold, calculated financial approach. This doesn't make enough sense on the dollar to be sustainable. He couldn't see it. He could not see how you would do it. Not in a way that would be good for the developers, because his thing was always the casino always wins. Microsoft can always make Game Pass sustainable for them. They can always make Game Pass profitable for them. But is it going to be good for the developers? Again, it's like Spotify. Spotify can always make money. They can always just turn the levers here and there, screw the artists and the talented studios that make this music and the talented engineers behind the songs that we love. They can screw them even more, tighten those nuts even further down, and they can squeeze out blood out of stone and make their money if they want to, however much they want to, right? Because that is the nature that the music industry has taken. And Sean Layden always say, like, Microsoft can do the same, Nintendo can, hell, PlayStation can do the same. But then what happens to the artists? What happens to the people that then are in the downline, and then once Sony has taken the cut, what are they left with? And he's always saying there just isn't enough left for them to have a thriving business model based off of these subscriptions. So he's always wondered about that. What I appreciate about Shuhei here is that he's taken a more maybe philosophical approach, talking a little bit more on the human side first, right? Because surely there wasn't uncaring in his portrayal of what would happen, of course, but he just looked at it like, let's look at the math. Does the math actually math? And his answer was no. And this was a person that, again, people have been demanding of PlayStation to talk more, and he comes straight from PlayStation. He's been at the head, he's been at the top of the mountain, right? People then want you to treat him as if this is how I know that if God came down, if Jesus actually had his second coming, we would crucify him all over again, but quicker, worse, and with even more disregard for what he had to say. I can guarantee it. Listen, let's take a look here what is it? Our good friend Shuhei said. Okay, so it says here former PlayStation boss and indie advocate, and this is a big thing. This actually indie advocate matters more to me in listening to Shuhei Yoshida than even being a PlayStation boss, because Shuhei Yoshida truly loves indie games, right? He really loves the developers. He really loves the humanity and the creative talents behind the games. Believes that the rise and potential dominance of subscription services like Xbox Game Pass could become dangerous, quote unquote, for developers eager to push the envelope. Now, listen to that sentence. It could become dangerous for developers. It's for developers that the danger lies. It's not about the company. Just as Sean Layden has said, the companies can always turn the dials to make their money. They can always be the first in line, get their cut, and then everybody else down the line has to just deal with the scraps, right? He says, speaking to game developer at Gamescom, the industry veteran explains subscription services are great if you are allowed inside the walled garden. The concern, he suggests, is that they inevitably expand on the bedrock of first party titles. It will, sorry, is that as they inevitably expand on the bedrock of first party titles, it will become harder for third party studios and indies to cross that divide. And listen, this is 100% true. We've seen it even with Microsoft. Ever since they were able to acquire ABK and then the plethora of studios they've acquired in the last 5 to 6 years, right? 7 years if you include the 2018 purchases, they have started to rely more and more and more on their own first party platforms. And that is just true. What he's saying here is 100% true. How is a game like sorry, how is a game, let's say like Seasons, right? If you guys haven't seen Seasons, it's called Seasons A Letter to the Future. Very small indie game. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it, right? You may have played it, you may probably didn't. But it's fine. Let's take that small indie game and let's say that it is good. Let's say it's a 8 out of 10 experience, right? Which from what I'm hearing, it is. I haven't played it yet. I did buy it, but I haven't played it yet. So let's take a Seasons, right? And let's put that into Game Pass. Let's even put it there day and date, and let's give it a little bit of a marketing budget. How is that going to go up against Doom the Dark Ages also on Game Pass? This is what he's talking about. You have to understand what he's coming from and what he's saying. He's saying that a small game compared to the Titanic, uh earth-shattering things that can drop from first-party studios as they, begin to start the machinery and drop all of these games. Even like you take a look at Microsoft in the last 5 to 6 months, they've had Indiana Jones, they've had Disavowed, they've had Staff of Midnight, they've had Doom the Dark Ages, they've had the Oblivion remake. How would a game like Seasons, okay, I'm not saying that Seasons is on Game Pass, but how would a game like that compete against those titles? It couldn't. That is what the concern is. It puts so much pressure on third party and especially on indies to actually find a way to be seen within that subscription service. We continue. This is a quote from Shuhei. He says, if the only way for people to play games is through subscriptions, that's really dangerous because what type of games can be created will be dictated by the owner of the subscription services. Now, listen, over here again, understand this. He is saying that if the only way for people to play through games is for to play games is through subscriptions, that's what he's saying is dangerous. If Xbox Game Pass became the only way you could access games on Xbox, that is what he identifies as dangerous. He is not saying that Game Pass in itself is dangerous as it is right now. This is why people they have such a lack of reading skills. They have such a lack of patience of actually trying to understand what the man is saying. He never said Game Pass is dangerous. He is saying that if services such as Xbox Game Pass became the only way for you to play your games, that will be dangerous. And he can see that some parts of the industry are trying to push this narrative forward. It's not just Game Pass, right? Take a look at Ubisoft Plus, take a look at EA Play. A lot of those, at least I think on PC, have a tier of the subscription service where you can access the games day and day through that subscription. And he is saying, like, again, if Assassin's Creed Shadows drop day and date on Ubisoft Plus on PC, right? How is something like Child of Light Remake or Child of Light 2 ever going to compete with an Assassin's Creed on Ubisoft Plus if they came out around the same time? Or even if they didn't? Even if Child of Light came out first, like 3 weeks early, how is it going to compare to the hype that will be going with a Assassin's Creed dropping soon, or a Rainbow Six dropping soon, or what? Actually, does Ubisoft even have any other like franchise that is big anymore besides Assassin's Creed and maybe Rainbow Six? I'm sure they have something. The Division, right? Maybe. They have things, whatever. But you understand the point he's making. Nothing here say Game Pass is dangerous. Because guess what? Game Pass right now is not the only way to access your games on Xbox. So get out of your feelings. He's not talking about you. He's just talking about where a potential future could go. And if you see like, oh, Game Pass is the thing he's taking a shot at, maybe it's because you realize that Game Pass is the closest thing to that future that we have right now. So then he continues to say, that's really, really risky because there always must be always fresh new ideas tried by small developers that create the next wave of development. But if the big companies dictate what games can be created, I don't think that will advance the industry. Again, people somehow saw this as a shot at Xbox, and yet here he's talking in plurality. If the big companies, he's talking about the big companies, not just the platform holders, but like imagine the EAs, the Ubisofts, the Take Twos, all of these, if they are the only ones that can basically get you a foot in the door, then that's going to regress the industry. Then he goes on to give a personal opinion about how the subscription models are going. He says Yoshida believes Sony delivered a healthier subscription model, discussing Xbox Game Pass and how Microsoft has evolved the platform by adding more first party while also regaining on its initial pledge to bring every single Xbox game studio project to the service on day one. Yoshida said the company might have bitten off more than it could chew. So now he's talking specifically about Game Pass. Okay, so now if you're gonna get mad at this, get mad at this part, right? So you understand what is about Game Pass and what is not. While acknowledging his own bias as a former PlayStation exec, Yoshida suggested Sony's take on the subscription model through PlayStation Plus, which has seen the company make major first party titles available to subscribers, but only after a traditional premium release, was perhaps healthier. So again, the man is aware that he thinks that his idea is the best idea around. Of course he does. Because if he had thought that Xbox Game Pass or the way that Microsoft decided to go about doing things with their subscription service was somehow better, somehow healthier, somehow more, I don't know, beneficial to almost anybody, he probably would have pushed for that when he was at the company. And remember, at the time, he was pretty much the top dog. So he could have gotten PlayStation Plus to look a lot more like what Xbox Game Pass is today. Obviously, he disagreed with that approach. So it's not surprising that he's going to say this. We can say like, yeah, that's your bias, that's your opinion, and we can say that your opinion has been exercised over the last 10 years, basically. But we can keep going. He says, I believe the way Sony approached subscriptions is healthier. You know, not to overpromise and to allow people to spend money to buy the new games. After a couple of years, there won't be many people willing to buy those games at that initial price. So they'll be added to the subscription service and there'll be more people to try those products in time for the next game in the franchise to come out. Now, what I love about this is that not only does he explain why, but he also tells you what he believes things should be like, right? He truly believes let it have a traditional release model, let it have a traditional waterfall approach because I talked about it before, the whole waterfall thing where you're going to start at the initial premium price, then you're going to drop in sale, then you're going to kind of like have sell, 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 and then eventually it's going to land at the basin of subscription services. Basically, that I think the original metaphor was talking more about movies, how you normally have a traditional theatrical release. Then after that, it will go to like the airlines. Then after that, it will go to like pay-per-view. Then after that, it might go to you know, DVDs and Blu-rays and everything like that. And then after that, it might go on like, free, watching for anybody on TV. That's the traditional waterfall approach that they reference. But It's a very similar thing that Sony kind of believes in, right? So you can see there that at the moment, since he was a part of Sony until recently, we can kind of take it as um as a truth that Sony believes that a game should be released, do its thing for about a year or two. Then when they start seeing lagging sales that are truly minimal, that's when they're going to start thinking about putting them on subscription services. And this kind of explains why certain games, even though they are fairly old and are beyond a couple of years old, still haven't been added to like a PlayStation Plus. Like I think if you take a look at Gran Turismo 7, it hasn't really been added into PlayStation Plus that I don't think it has. They've had a They've had my first Gran Turismo, which is like a smaller package that they give you, like a taster dish of Gran Turismo that I think is available through the subscription service. But that's just like a smaller experience. So the whole thing hasn't come out yet, and I think that's simply because it is still selling. Okay, so we continue and we'll finish here. Although he feels Microsoft might have made an initial misstep with that day one pledge, Yoshida said the company has excelled in other areas. He described Microsoft's approach to backwards compatibility, which saw the company make it possible for Xbox Series X and S owners to play thousands of original Xbox, Xbox 360, and Xbox One titles, as smart and very well planned. They must have put a lot of engineering effort to achieve what they have done, he continued. Microsoft wasn't the only company to receive plaudits during our chat. Yoshida also took time to praise Nintendo for slapping two controllers on the Switch and Switch 2 to enable multiplayer functionality straight out of the box. That's so smart. It's in the DNA to cater to the needs of family and friends. Okay, so obviously, that's the end of the article. So I think that a lot of people read or heard about the headline, and the headline made it seem like, especially not this headline. This headline is fairly on point. It simply said that Shuei Yoshida wants subscription services could become dangerous for developers. That's the 100% true. That's the 100% what he said. It's not clickbait at all, and it's true to what he said. But other headlines, especially one I've seen from Windows Central, was not like that at all, right? So over here, I want you to see the difference side by side, right? So from the original article, you're going to see, right? So over here, let me put it in front of you so that you can see for yourself on the line. Shuhei Yoshida warns subscription services could become dangerous for developers. From Windows Central, it says former head of PlayStation says Microsoft Xbox Game Pass is quote unquote dangerous because quote unquote big companies dictate what games can be created, and he could not be more wrong. How is that? How is that? How is that an indication whatsoever of the headline? That has nothing to do with what he said. He said none of that whatsoever. He never said Xbox Game Pass is dangerous. He never said that Microsoft dictates what games can be created. Ever. That did not happen. And yet, that is basically what we are getting. Isn't that insane? Isn't that insane? And that is what people see. People do not go back to the original source, and they get angry at the at what someone else portrayed his words to be, even though those were not his words at all. So listen, first of all, I agree with pretty much everything Shuhei said. I do think that if subscription services were to become the only thing, it will be a blackness, it will be a darkness, and we've seen it in music. People that are part of the music industry are not thrilled about subscription services. I'm sure they all wish we could go back to the days of the iPod where we bought our albums, even if it was digitally, and that was the way that they could make money. I think that will make a lot of sense. Listen, unfortunately, I don't think that the music industry is ever going to return to that, but it doesn't mean that every other industry has to follow. To a lesser degree, I think it's also happened with movie subscription services. It's funny because I was taking a deep dive into like the movie sectors and fans and how they're feeling about it, and man, I didn't know it was as bad. It's so funny because a lot of the same complaints that they have about movies and how cinephiles are feeling, they incredibly mirror how a lot of gamers feel about gaming. But for me, it just kind of proves that gaming is really not in as bad a place as people think it is. For example, just to quickly touch on that, a few of the issues are that certain movies cost 150, 100 basically to $300 million, right? Familiar, isn't it? And then they go to flop at the box office. Again, familiar, isn't it? But here's the thing, those movies often account for only like a year or two of development, right? That's like a year. Usually, it's like a year from the time that they even announce the movie to the time that it is released. So I'm like, you guys are spend. That's a lot of waste. That's a lot of waste. There was Black Adam. Black Adam reportedly cost $250 million to make. The reason it cost so much is that, no, was it Black Adam? No, it was it Red Rising? It's at the one where they have The Rock and Ryan Gosling, and apparently The Rock demanded $50 million for that film, and he got given it. He had $50 million of a $250 million budget film. So him by himself represented 20% of the cost of that production. Yo, listen, it doesn't matter how much you hate Neil Druckmann. I bet you he's not paid $50 million to make a game. That is insane. Listen. It's so funny. It's so funny. There's so many parallels. But one of the big things that is a parallel is that a lot of them feel like the Netflixes of the world and the subscription services of the world have created a lot of really garbage products for really, really expensive amounts of money. And instead of renewing really great seasons that people really like, they prefer to renew something like Emily in Paris, which everybody hates. But actually, Emily in Paris keeps getting renewed because it is a vehicle for advertisers to sometimes subtly, sometimes not subtly at all, advertise their luxury brands and their luxury products. Basically, it is a giant ad campaign that they have kind of shoehorn a show to be around, even though it really has nothing to say as a show other than watch the next ad. I like to think of Emily in Paris as a meandering walk between ad placements. That's basically what that show is. And listen, Netflix loves that. And for me, I'm thinking that's what's going to come to gaming down the line if we do not resist some of the worst impulses that these companies have. The subscription services are eventually going to fill your subscription, library with things like that, with projects that are like Emily in Paris that are more interested in advertising to you than actually delivering anything of substance to you. So interesting food for thought. But yeah, that's it. That's what I've got. We did it in under an hour, so that's going to be fantastic. I hope that this was somewhat entertaining. It was three very different things, but I just wanted to say something because it has been a while since I've said anything at all. So there we go. Now, listen, if you haven't listened to it yet, go ahead and listen to the last podcast on Podworks channel. It was amazing. It was a good time. Just a final word from that podcast. Listen, I don't care who you vote for, okay? But please vote, okay? When you vote, you allow your voice to matter, and do not let anyone tell you that your vote doesn't matter, because the very person telling you that your vote doesn't matter is going to vote themselves and realize that in a void of silence, when their voice is the only one that can be heard, their thoughts are the only thoughts that can be followed. So please go and vote. No matter what it is you believe in, be a part of that democratic process. It is the best civic duty that you can do. Maybe one day we'll talk more about it. I think I should make it This is Political Part 2, and we can just talk everything about politics. But again, I'm not trying to convince you of my politics. I just want you to exercise your right to participate in the political process, because the more of us do that, the more representative of the majority the parliaments that we have will end up being. So there we go. A little food for thought there. Go look into the benefits of voting, because your vote is almost never wasted. You should always go. You should always perform that civic duty. It will make your life better, and it will make the life of other people that you will never meet better as well. So go ahead and do it.